The Health and Human Services Secretary, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., unveiled his Make Our Children Healthy Again report today that includes a 20-page strategy document that focuses on food, lifestyle changes, pesticides, and screen time. It's slim on details, though, on the next steps that the administration may take to keep your kids healthy, but it does signal more changes are coming, also when it comes to vaccines. The report says the HHS will work with the White House on a new vaccine framework that will ensure, quote, America has the best childhood vaccine schedule and ensures scientific and medical freedom. Kennedy obviously is a longtime vaccine critic. That's a known position of his, but it's also one that has put him at odds at times with his boss, who oversaw one of the largest vaccine efforts in U.S. history and said last week that there are vaccines that work, quote, pure and simple, a comment that Secretary Kennedy was asked about today.
I think you have to be very careful when you say that some people don't have to be vaccinated. Look, you have vaccines that work. They just pure and simple work.
I was wondering, Secretary, if you could respond to what the president said on Friday. On the same note here, he said there are vaccines that just work, pure and simple.
I agree with that.
Joining me tonight for more on this, independent Senator of Vermont, Bernie Sanders. And Senator Sanders, it's great to have you here because after that very contentious hearing last week that happened on Capitol Hill, you accused RFK Jr. of endangering children across this country. Does anything in today's report change your mind on that?
Look, some things that Kennedy is saying make absolute sense. Do we want our kids to eat healthy foods? Absolutely. But by the way, if we're going to do that, we have to address the crisis of healthy foods in supermarkets being outrageously expensive. I don't know that he got into that. The idea that our kids should exercise, the idea that our kids should not be consuming enormous amounts of sugar, I think there is no disagreement about that. But when you talk about making America and our children healthy, and you throw 15 million people off the health care they have by $1 trillion cut in Medicaid in order to give huge tax break to the 1%, when you talk about raising premiums for people on the Affordable Care Act, very, very high, which means that people are simply not going to be able to go to the doctor. That ain't making America healthy. The truth of the matter is, according to a number of studies, tens of thousands of people are going to die as a result of that.
Well, one thing that stood out to me from the report is that part of it calls for making sure there's whole, healthy food through government-funded SNAP nutrition program for low-income Americans. Obviously, the president just signed legislation that would cut SNAP.
Massive cuts in nutrition, absolutely. Look,
so do those seem contradictory to you?
Oh, I think maybe. Of course it's contradictory. They have massive cuts in nutrition programs, and they're talking about making decent food available to the kids. Of course, there's a contradiction. Look, the bottom line here is we are the only major country on earth that does not guarantee health care to all people as a human right. You want to make America healthy? You do what every other major country does. Pass a Medicare for all single-payer system. Number two, we are spending twice as much per person on health care as the people of any other country. You want to make America healthy? Have the guts to take on the insurance companies and the drug companies who are ripping us off every single day, substantially lower the cost of health care in America. Those are some of the things we can do.
Well, there was the executive order that the president signed tonight when it comes to something that I think you and Kennedy agree with, at least in theory on, which is drug advertisements on television.
Yes.
And Secretary Kennedy was touting this outside the White House tonight. The president wants drug makers to disclose all side effects. You've introduced legislation to ban prescription drug ads.
Those, ever see those side effects on TV? Mm-hmm. I mean, they give you 3 hours worth of all the ailments you have if you take the drug. That's fine to disclose the side effects, but we are one of two nations in the entire world that allow that kind of pharmaceutical industry advertising. The result of that is people go to their doctors, oh, doctor, I need this medicine. And the doctor says, well, you may not, but I saw it on television, I need it. And that is what the pharmaceutical industry wants. So in my view, we should ban that advertising, absolutely.
So that's an area where you and the secretary agree?
No, he's talking about making more information available. I'm talking about banning it.
Banning it outright. The one thing today that we did just get some news tonight, you're the ranking member on the Senate Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions Committee. It just announced a hearing next week, your chairman did, Senator Bill Cassidy, with the ousted CDC director who was fired by Secretary Kennedy and President Trump, Dr. Susan Menarez. What questions do you have for her next week?
Well, first thought, when Kennedy was before our committee, he basically said she's a liar. That's number one. And then he said something really remarkable. He said, I asked her if she was trustworthy, and she said no. Well, you know, I have fired a number of people in my life. Nobody has ever told me that, hey, Bernie, I'm just not trustworthy. So I think we want to talk about that. But more importantly, what we want to talk about is Kennedy's views on vaccines. There's a lot of back and forth, and every other day he's saying something else. Here is the bottom line. I just did an event today with probably 50 doctors. Vaccines are safe. Vaccines are effective. Vaccines have saved, over a period of years, tens and tens of millions of lives around the world. There is nobody very few people in the scientific or medical community who disagree with that. And one of the great crises we're facing as a nation right now is we have a Secretary of Health and Human Services who is literally undermining faith in vaccines. And that is one of the reasons why Trump should ask for his resignation.
Can I also ask you about what's happening inside the Democratic Party, New York City especially? We saw Chuck Schumer today, the minority leader, meeting with Zohran Mamdani, who is the Dem candidate for mayor in New York today. He came out of that. He said they had a good meeting, that they know each other well. We're going to keep talking. He did not endorse Mamdani yet, though.
Well, this is the way I look at it. I think it's no great secret that the Democratic Party is struggling right now. According to polls, they're probably at the lowest point that they've been in a very long time. And the reason for that, in my view, is that at a time when we have more income and wealth inequality than we've ever had in the history of our country. I don't know if you noticed, I'm sure you did, that Tesla is now proposing to make Elon Musk a trillionaire. He's got to get a nice, do it a good job, give him $800 or $900 billion, all right, which is insane. So you got 60% of our people living paycheck to paycheck. We have the highest rate of childhood poverty and senior poverty of any major country on earth. You got half of older workers have nothing in the bank as they face retirement. You got a quarter of our seniors trying to get by on $15,000 a year or less. Have the Democrats really been saying, you know what, maybe we got to deal with this issue of income and wealth inequality. Maybe we have to take on the corporate greed so that we don't have an economy in which the very rich get richer while wages for the last 50 years for workers have been stagnant. All right, so that's the basic problem. Democratic Party has got to make a choice. Do they go with their wealthy campaign donors, very wealthy contributors?
You think they're scared to endorse Mamdani?
Or do they stand with the working class? Let me talk about Mamdani. I was just there with him the other day. This is a guy who starts a campaign for mayor. You know what he was in the polls? 2%. All right? He wins. He wins by a lot. He has over 50,000 volunteers, people enthusiastic about his campaign. He brings out people, registers all kinds of new people, brings out non-traditional voters. Now, if you were a Democratic leader in a party which is now in the doldrums, you would be jumping for joy. Oh my God, this is just the guy we want. I want to see this all over the country. But the 5 major New York State Democratic leaders have yet to endorse him. That is, to me, absurd. How do you be a Democratic leader and not support the Democratic candidate for mayor who ran an extraordinary campaign? That's pretty crazy stuff.
Do you believe they're scared to endorse him?
I think that money speaks. And Mamdani has made it clear. I don't know if you saw the paper today. You have the billionaire class in New York City at a meeting. They just met today, sitting around saying, all right, we are prepared to spend as much money as we can in order to defeat Mamdani. So what you have is an oligarch group in New York. But you know what they're worried about? They're not just worried about Mamdani. If Mamdani wins in New York, the idea will go all across the country that, in fact, you can take on the oligarchs and you can beat them. That at the end of the day, grassroots organizing, ordinary people, working class people standing up and fighting back are more powerful than the oligarchs and all of their money. That is what the oligarchs are afraid of. That's what the Republicans are afraid of. That is what I fear the Democratic leadership is afraid of.
Do you think Trump's attempt to interfere in the race will have impact?
I hope and expect it'll have not the impact that Trump wanted. I mean, I think that if Trump is working with Cuomo, how crazy is that? I mean, it just confirms everything that many of us have been saying, that you got, the oligarchs do not want to see candidates who represent the working class. So it's a very important election, and it goes beyond New York City. This is of national significance.
Senator Bernie Sanders, thank you for your time tonight, as always.
Thank you very much.
Much appreciated.